Well, I apologize if you didn't like that comment about the salmon in that presentation. You're really not going to like mine. All right, let's go. First of all, happy Ocean Day, everyone. I'm not sure that's been said yet. Great. I also didn't realize there was audio on this, so I apologize after a long lunch for now listening to wave sound. Can we turn the audio down? Is that possible? I'll just talk through it. I'll go back to that slide. Anyway, it's a nice slide of the ocean. The point of that slide was that I was going to illustrate that when I was 23 years old and I was studying to get into medical school, I used to study at a cafe that had this amazing overlook of the coast off of San Francisco. And as I was reading my physiology and my anatomy and my molecular biology, looking out at the ocean, I couldn't help but think there had to be some connection to the two. And all of this life had to come from someplace. And if you're looking out there at this incredible energy of the ocean, you can really begin to appreciate how life emerged from the ocean and how our biochemistry, how our anatomy, how this is all structured based upon what has come out of it. I should also say that I was fresh out of divinity school at the time, and I was thinking about the meaning of life and how these things fit together. And so while that may have been more influenced by Aquinas and Aristotle, there was certainly some overlap between the two. Anyway, I mention this because my talk somewhat drifts into ontology. And so we're trying to better understand the nature of an environment and humans, I think, at this conference. It's useful, I think, to get a better understanding of my perspective and where I came from, so that informs your perceptions of my talk. All right. And now we'll just move right along. And it looks like the timer hasn't started yet, so I've got a bonus couple of minutes there. That's also perfect. Very good. Sorry, yeah. So today I'm going to talk about two of my favorite topics, One, health, and ocean biotechnology. Ocean biotechnology, of course, because it's Oceans Day, and this is really my life. And One Health, because it's a very critical framework that has influenced the way international structures and frameworks have come together over recent years, and has been particularly salient in the context of COVID-19, of course. So One Health is a discipline that's been around now for about 20 years. It doesn't often include fish on the slide of relationship, but we'll get to that as well. It was originally coined by a veterinarian. I don't know if any of you know this guy, Billy Koresh, really good guy, works at EcoHealth Alliance out of New York City. And he was at a conference much like this, and folks were debating the nature of human health, animal health, environmental health, and he said, there's just one health. And it's absolutely true. We're fundamentally connected to animals and the environment, and it's important to remember that. And One Health is a great framework for understanding. There are many definitions for the term. This is a definition that's recently been put together by a high-level expert panel that's been convened by the World Health Organization, FAO, OIE, and UNEP. And I mean, you can read this, but basically the gist of it is that it's environment, human health, and animals. And these are really critical because they bring these different dimensions of health back to humans, but at the same time, they also highlight the importance of these other dimensions, which are often kept separate. They're often kept as subsidiary. And if you're a veterinarian, you're very aware of this. Veterinary medicine often takes a back seat to human medicine. But really, it's these early measures that can be taken in veterinary health, which can help humans as well. I also want to mention this. This is not just a 21st century construct. The concept of linking humans, animals, and the environment have been around for effectively as long as humans have. And they've taken different forms, based on different geographies. But all of these, Ayurveda, indigenous medicines, Chinese medicines, just to name a few, I'm sure some of you in this room probably practice these kinds of meditation and medicine. And so you understand how these things link together. And it wasn't really until the 20th century when sort of medicine sort of started separating itself from these fields and focusing on the molecularization and cellularization of science that we got away from these understandings of the world, but they still exist. One Health is also just one of a number of important environmental health frameworks. Planetary health has emerged in recent years. Many of these things are synonymous. They have slightly different foci. Planetary health looks at overall global systems often. Climate change and health, of course, focuses on just that, biodiversity and health. There's an emergent discipline of oceans and health. I know some of you are part of this dialogue as well. Some textbooks have been published looking at some of the things we're talking about today. And then I also have the SDGs up here. I know the SDGs aren't just an environmental health framework, but they're absolutely an environmental health framework. And health and environment are fundamentally a part of each of these areas. But then this happened, COVID. You're all familiar with this. You've all seen this. Some of you probably had it in your body. This really changed the game, and it elevated the discourse of One Health to the sort of highest international levels. And so you had political action from the leaders of these international organizations forming a quadripartite, didn't even know that was a word until they put it together, but linking up these different agendas to make a statement on One Health. That action, though, has really been predicated on years of work done at sort of lower administrative, bureaucratic, and expert levels. Folks who are writing reports on this, linking together these different disciplines, doing economic studies. There's been really elegant work, of course, that's been done around avian influenza and SARS and MERS. All of this, of course, predated the COVID outbreak. And if we had perhaps sort of listened to sort of the advice of some of these experts before, we wouldn't have had some of the same COVID outcomes we'd had. One Health also very much focuses at an operational level. I apologize, some of this is a bit hard to see. Basically what these are country level reports, folks that have taken this One Health concept, integrated it into their governments and local programs, and built shared relationships between health ministries, agriculture ministries, and environmental ministries. And then these are just some photos of examples of that work on the ground. Some work that I've participated in and others. And you can see there's just a range of examples here, from veterinary health to beach work and hospital work as well. One Health is also represented in the private sector. These are just two examples. Zoetis, a large animal health company in Danone, which is a food and nutrition company. And they have different ways of thinking about how they incorporate this into their overall sales pitches. I know we've got some private sector folks in the room, and it can be useful to align yourself with these agendas. Many companies are actually One Health companies, they just don't know it yet. But it can be very important and useful to make those links. So you can use it, of course, for advertising, but then also to get the right experts in the room and consult on these shared issues. However, One Health often forgets the ocean. And this is something that I think it's important to bring to the attention of this group. This is work that was done about 8 years ago, doing an analysis of One Health publications. And you can scour this word cloud, but I guarantee you won't find oceans and you won't find fish. I'd conjecture to say probably not much has actually changed in these past 8 years, with the exception of you'd have COVID as a sort of a large part of this word cloud now, but oceans still wouldn't be a part of it. And I think that's something that really needs to change. So moving on to the second dimension of my talk, which is ocean biotechnology, often called marine biotechnology, kind of interchangeable. There is a really nice One Health narrative associated with this discipline. And it's something that has been a sort of a part of my work and a part of my life, working sort of first with the World Bank in developing these programs for One Health, working also in aquaculture and agriculture, nutrition, and trying to tie these things together. So again, there's many different definitions for this. Some of us in this room may have written some of these definitions, so thank you for that. But really, fundamentally, what it's about is just linking together, building knowledge out of the prosperity of ocean life resources to impact human health and well-being. And there's any manner of ways this can be done, which I'll touch upon here in just a moment. This also, I put this up, this is part of the elegant narrative around marine biotechnology. So each of us is about 3/4 water, 3/4 salt water. And the reason for that is that life evolved from the ocean. And we've carried this ocean around with us. All of our molecular biology evolved in these contexts. And so in order to sort of maintain our molecular and cellular function, we've needed to keep this ocean with us. And so if we're interested in finding solutions to our health or to animal health, the oceans are a really great place to start. The oceans are home to 3/4 of all animals by biomass, the majority of protists, things like protozoa, algae, and molds. And most taxonomies, actually, of animals also live in the oceans. So a tremendous place to go bioprospecting, tremendous place to learn about ourselves. There's also a lot that we don't know about the oceans. Estimates vary, but there's somewhere in the ballpark of 2 million species. Of those 2 million species, we've identified about 240,000. For those, we have about 500 genome assemblies. Not really a lot. So the magnitude here and the potential for exploration and discovery is just absolutely profound. That being said, there have been tens of thousands of unique biochemical compounds that have been isolated from sea creatures. And I believe that Adriana's talk will go into some of these and how these connect and some of the innovations that have developed as a result. Many marine organisms are a part of this story. Things as diverse as bacteria and viruses to cone snails to sharks, jellyfish. There have been so many innovations that have come from the marine space in ways that you might expect using animal models to ways that you might not expect because they're fluorescing and producing laboratory proteins and so on. There's tremendous human biomedical precedent for using marine species. There have been 13 Nobel Prizes in medicine or chemistry awarded for research that's been done using marine species. There are many dozens of approved and pipeline drugs, things that can treat HIV, herpes. There's actually been some medications that have been used for COVID-19, remdesivir, for example, not directly derived from oceans, but from analogs that were derived from studying ocean species. Many laboratory applications, molecular marking, GFP, this things that makes things glow green in the laboratory, came from a jellyfish. Really interesting story if anyone's interested in looking it up. Surgical bioproducts, skin grafts. There are folks in Iceland that are using the waste products of fish as grafts for neurological industries. Oxygen carriers, which we heard about earlier today from Lisa, bone matrices, and the list goes on, and then manifold cosmetic applications as well. This also, I apologize, is a bit small to see, but this, in our opinion, is the universe of biotechnological applications from marine organisms. And so you have those that are biomedically important, but you also have many that are critical for other sectors as well. The production of biomaterials or environmental remediation, or the use of enzyme, industrial, and different industrial products. All of these can be derived from different marine species. Also, I'm now a private sector guy after my career at the World Bank, so I spent a lot more time thinking about money and markets. The markets for some of these innovations are absolutely tremendous as well. Cosmetics, as you might expect, and nutraceuticals, aquaculture. I don't even have pharmaceuticals on. If you had pharmaceuticals, it would be the entire page. But there is tremendous opportunity to forward knowledge and drive markets forward by integrating these marine biotechnologies. The aquaculture market, I'm sure Rashid will talk about this in a later today, but it's very large and growing. It's about $200 billion. It comprises about half the seafood that we eat comes from aquaculture, and in the next 10, 20, 30 years, this is only going to increase. It's actually, at the moment, the fastest growing food production sector as well. So a really great place to work and start a company. And so that's just what I did 3 years ago. Left the World Bank, moved up here. This place is famous for these little guys. Anybody know what these are? Probably guessed. Yeah, salmon eggs. So these are now my best friends. This is about a $10 billion market in Norway. It's absolutely not without its problems, but it does present a tremendous opportunity to produce sustainable and healthy protein for these growing global markets. It has many advantages. It has a relatively lower carbon footprint compared to these other animals that we eat. It has lower land use, of course, lower water requirements, and so on. But the story is not all golden. This is what salmon eat. It's actually not bad. I eat it sometimes when there's nothing else to eat. but you want to eat the food pellets that aren't yet coated in omega-3s, but it's like a snack, pair it with good brown Norwegian cheese. Anyway, what's in these feed pellets is an array of nutrients, things like omega-3s that come from the wild. You have fish inputs. This gets back to your question about what kind of protein are these animals eating. For something like salmon, you have a fish in, fish out ratio of about 1.16. Some farms actually have that down to about 0.4 or 0.5, and that's because they can use the other fishing industries as input those into here. So I agree it's a technicality, but we're not feeding these chicken these same byproducts, and they've got to go somewhere. Anyhow, there's many problems with this in terms of ingredient absorption, ingredient retention, and use, and resources are limited. So what we've done is devised a method using these adorable little fellows, which are just nanocapsules. What these do is they increase the absorption and bioavailability of nutrients that are already used in the sector to increase the efficacy of ingredients that are commonly found. And some ingredients that are used in aquaculture can have as much as a 90% waste. These things just get pooped out in the fish, and it's a real shame because you harvest them from the environment and then you put them into the fish and they go right out. But with these nanocapsules that are made from biodegradable biopolymers, you can better integrate them into the animal gut and get them into the tissues where they belong. It's also the same technology as this. So nanoencapsulation has been around for several decades in human biomedicine, and it's recently been used in 2 of the most widely used coronavirus vaccines. And what these nanocapsules do in the case of the coronavirus vaccine is they protect mRNA so it can be processed in your body. We're doing the same thing, but instead of using mRNA, we're protecting things like omega-3s, astaxanthin, which is what makes salmon pink, and other critical medicines and nutrients. And this is just a schematic of what this looks like. So effectively, you take this biodegradable polymer shell, you input certain nutrients, and then you integrate that into the animal feed. And with that, you get these efficiency multiplications. It can increase the shelf life, increase ingredient protection, increase protection in the stomach, and then ultimately improve the survival and the growth rate of these animals. This is not just because of my own company, I'm not saying this, but as these industries grow, Norway has an objective of 5xing the salmon industry over the next 20 years. If they're going to do that, these animals need to eat, right? And so you've got to get food from someplace. And you can either find new ingredients or you can increase the efficiency of the ingredients that are already on the market. And that's what we're doing. So my concluding propositions is, number one, to include the ocean and marine species in One Health frameworks and action. One Health is very hot right now. And if we're to elevate the agenda of the oceans, it can be worthwhile to tie that to other agendas, bump that up from that 5% that Jim showed, and get that higher on the SDG agenda. Additionally, I think it can be very useful to include One Health and ocean frameworks in action. So, for the same reasons, the more you can marry these topics together, the better off I think both agendas will be. Also, consider the private sector. Most people in the world work in the private sector. And while many of us are public sector focused because there's leverage there as well, the private sector has immense pull. And so when we're developing actions and recommendations, it can be very useful to think of them. And then lastly, think about leveraging life and innovate using nature. I know there's a lot happening right now with silicon chip and in San Francisco, and that's great. But we already have an entire world that's full of marine species that we can use, not to exploit, but to learn from and integrate into our health and well-being. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for some questions. Are there any?
For me?
Yeah, well, go ahead. You go ahead.
Just a small contribution from a private sector side. I see that's super interesting for me. My question is, how do you see ways to fill the gap between the private sector that is typically like the dark side, and all the institutional part of the research that we are having around here, that probably, I mean, your experience is a little bit close, but in so many areas of our planet, I see in Italy, but in Europe, are kind of far, because this distance in some places, it's blocking up these processes that you were mentioning, and saying that the business part as a dark side means that they become even darker because they get far. This is something that I'm trying to do on my side, but I would like to hear your voice.
Yeah, so I think it's important to take the long view. You know, what is good for the environment is good for business. You know, it may take some time to appreciate that, but you see the way that that the market has changed over the years. You know, I've been in the startup space now, and the number of investment funds and companies that are popping up to address some dimension of climate impact is absolutely tremendous. And I think that it will be impossible for the companies of the future to not have this built into their system of KPIs. Indeed, there's sort of near-term metrics in terms of what you got to make, but also if you're thinking long-term, you're thinking about who your customers are going to be in the future, you absolutely need to consider sustainability impact. And that looks different depending on which sector you're in. But I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a company that can move into the next 5-10 years without having that kind of thinking.
Thank you, James. Go ahead.
There we go. First of all, thank you for that. It was a presentation that reminded me, I hope we get copies of all the slides. Are we going to get copies of all the slides? It would be great to have them. So on aquaculture, you started with Norway, with salmon in Norway for reasons that seem obvious. Can you talk a little bit about where you go from there and what potential you see to take this into other parts of aquaculture, and also what the sort of drivers might be for a broader part of the sector to adopt these tools?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for that. I didn't even have to tee that up with you. But, you know, we started in salmon in Norway because it's a very, very rich market. The current price of salmon right now is 130 NOK per kilo, which is about $15 US. The production price of salmon is about $3 US. These guys are making a tremendous amount of money. That's great if you own a salmon farm, but it's also a great place to work if you're interested in innovating in the industry. These guys have a very acute sense of what's coming down the pipeline as well, the resource constraints, what needs to be changed. And so they're interested in contributing to new systems of innovation. The technology that we've developed, however, works in any species. You know, a tilapia is not so different from a salmon, which is not so different than a carp. Shrimp are a little bit different, but they still need to eat. And so as we're focusing on the improvement efficiencies and digestibility and absorption, this can really work across species. And as we're looking into the future and thinking about how we're changing our ingredient landscape, and if we're going to be feeding these animals insects, or if we're going to be feeding them different kinds of plant proteins that are pre-digested so these animals can then digest them, we need to be thinking also about how we improve the overall use of these so there's enough to go around. So there's absolutely an expansion plan. We've been considerate about this with our investors, the kinds of investors we've taken on, so we can expand to new geographies in Africa and Asia. There's a food security dimension of this as well. If you're thinking about who is eating what kinds of fish in places like sub-Saharan Africa, sometimes those fish can be a bit nutritionally deficient. And some of the studies that you cited, I think, sort of go into that. Not every fish is created equal. And so there are opportunities to fortify these fish, create the next generation of golden rice, but create golden tilapia for some of these communities by selling them the right kinds of fortified feeds.
Okay, Jacques, it's up to you. We're out of time. Do you want to go ahead and ask a quick question?
I make a quick comment and a small question. The quick comment is, in the last 10 years or so, more than 60 countries have written themselves bioeconomy strategy. What you have presented in your first part is very much also in the second, bioeconomy. Few of them have captured your agenda of marine-based bioeconomy. So I think we have a communication task there. My question is a simple one. We hear a lot of lab-based and artificial meat. How about artificial fish?
So it's a good question, and it's actually something we're working on. So our research laboratory in Boston is collaborating with the largest center for cellular agriculture in the world, and they're aspirational. If you think about what it takes to grow a cow or a chicken, there's lots of natural inputs, naturally occurring inputs. You've got sun, you've got water, you've got grass sometimes. If you're growing a meat in, am I done? Okay. If you're growing meat in a laboratory, you've got to input all of these things. You've got to control for bacteria. If you're growing a steak, you've also got to make that steak look marbled. So there's tremendous complications in doing so. But innovation in that space is actually pushing together this whole agenda of food science. And there's lots of things that are being spun out. And so we're working with them because there's opportunities to develop our nutrients for that, but then also take some of the byproducts of that and integrate that into animal feed. So if Tom down the street doesn't want to eat a lab-grown salmon, he may eat a salmon that was fed with insect protein that was grown in a laboratory.
Okay, we're out of time, but we have a discussion later. So Jeffrey, can you save your comment for that?
Question, what's the scalability? Is it just perfectly elastic supply, or what are the limits to this kind of fishery or aquaculture on a global scale?
I'll just quickly answer that. But there's constantly new innovations that are being developed in aquaculture. The salmon farming at the moment is predominantly done in net pens off the coast of Norway, Chile, Faroe Islands, and so on. But there's tremendous innovation now to take this out into the open ocean. As you do that, you can increase scalability almost without limit. The limit then just becomes the food that's sort of integrated into these animal pens. There's also a lot of innovation that's happening, bringing this on shore and developing tanks. There are projects producing vertical shrimp in Singapore. There's some in LA. So there's all sorts of innovation that's happening, and in my opinion, it's just an ingredient issue.
Okay, thank you.